Good afternoon, everybody. Well, good evening. Let me give my brief apologies for being delayed. We're going to start this meeting off at 5:44 p.m. for the Finance Committee. So we're going to first do a call to order. So I want to get Trustee Steve.
Present.
Trustee Brown.
Present.
And Trustee House, I am here. We're going to go with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and moving into the agenda, under old business, these are the items that we... Oh, you made me feel bad. I'm going to lead us in prayer and forgive me, Lord. Heavenly Father, we come to you today just to thank you again for seeing us here safely and happily. We ask that you cover this meeting, the minds and the hearts and souls of everybody that's here, that we continue moving, looking for the agenda of Dolton, that the finances be saved, that our community be saved, and that you extend that to all of our friends, family, loved ones, and community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, so for old business, these are the items that we want to make sure we continue to have a focus on, so that way we know that we're conducting the business and that things that have happened in the past do not continue to reoccur. So the monthly financial report, I've been doing some work with the Conspire Group within the next 2 months. So we're in August. By September, October, we're going to work to have a one-page summary of all of these documents that can give a overview for the community that may be a little bit less cumbersome or a little bit easier to interpret. We will still continue to have all of the documents because I believe that anybody that's inquisitive or wants to know should have the backup support to it. But there's a scenario, there's a snapshot that I've seen before that I want to work with them to implement that can kind of give us an overview of what our general fund is doing, water fund, and how our cash flows are running. So the plan is to have that in place by hopefully next month, but definitely by October. Having said that, we do want to continue to work with the reports that we do have and continue to report on the things that are going on so that we make sure, in particular, as we have the crisis that, and I say crisis, but the challenges that we do in terms of making sure we have additional police and the funding, that we're still monitoring how we're going to pay for those things. Having said that, the monthly financial report is the initial report that was passed out. It's a 28-page document that starts at the top. It has the cover sheet that says Village of Dolton monthly financial reports. This is for the month ending July 31st. If you go on the second page, it gives you kind of the table of contents. The two funds that we continue to want to focus on and highlight are the general fund for the Village of Dolton. That general fund is where our tax money comes in, and that's where a majority of our expenses are paid from. And when I say a majority, police, the fire department, public works, general administration, housing, our administrative staff, finance, all come out of that general fund. So we want to make sure that that's where we're monitoring those expenses. The page that I forward to in our packet is page 10, because that gives us an overall summary of where we are at in terms of revenues that have come in compared to the expenses that have been spent out. So I'm gonna pause just for a moment to see if those that have the packet are with me, and if not, for those that have missed it, you have it. If you're able to, are you able to, or maybe I'll share with Trustee Brown, and then see if we can Xerox a couple of packets. One moment. Okay. All right. So I want to thank Administrator Scott, which reminds me that next month I will make sure that we have at least 8 packets prepared. I'm not sure how many to do, and so I'll take the hit on that one. Don't beat me up. You got 3 minutes at Citizens Address to beat me up. But in the meanwhile, in the general fund, page 10 will show our excess of revenues over expenditures, to show that for the first 3 months of the fiscal year, the 3 months being May, June, and July, that we have a surplus of $717,000 within our general fund. So at this point in time, we're doing well in terms of our revenue over expenses. Page 10, yes. I'm looking towards the middle of the page. So if you go from the expenditures, revenues over expenses are 717. That is day-to-day operating revenues versus expenditures. It does not include any financing that we've done. Now, we want to be mindful that our revenue, the bulk of our revenue comes from property tax, meaning that we get a lot of it with the second installment. So around July, August, and September, when those property taxes come in, it looks really good. But we do have to manage that for a good 4 to 5 months, because next month that 700,000 will dwindle, and then again the month after it will. We also have our bond obligation to pay in December, so we don't want to pound our chest that we have a ton of money, but we would like to kind of celebrate that at this point in time we're in a position that we're sustaining. By saying that, I want to ask the board any questions or anything, any thoughts they want to add.
When is the bond payment? December?
In December, yes. The next 2 points on the, the next one is the water fund. So I've talked with the Casperate group, Chris, who is our representative. Within our water fund, we're going to look at the page, but there have been a lot of errors within our reporting in the water fund, and we've had this error for 3 months now. So my last communication with him is we cannot have errors on this reporting, because the errors in reporting does not allow us to monitor if we're doing well with water. And we know that water is a hot issue in this community. Having said that, in the spirit of transparency, I want to point out the errors that we are having. Page 13 within our packet, and I'll say page 13, 12, and 13, because 13 just shows the tail end of it. Let me find my page 12. So as we look at, well, started on 12, but we're going to go 12 to 13. Page 12, just looking at the operating revenues, it shows negative 14 million in the July actuals, which would be virtually impossible for the village to collect, which also triggers the fact that we have an issue with our reporting in the water department. So 12, if you look at the operating side right here, this is just revenue. So that's saying we collected negative 14 million in revenue, which is virtually impossible for us to do. That lets us know we have an issue. Our issue right now is, at a minimum, it's reporting. There could be other issues within the water department. So for us as the board, as well as for the community, we want to make sure that we're all aware that we have a reporting issue, and that we're communicating with that the administrator is on top of it, which I know she's aware of it, and that we're resolving it. My last communication with Chris, he said this will be resolved by Friday, and he will email updated reports to the board and to anybody and any residents that would like to get an update. We're more than happy to share that with you as well. Please let me know. But we do still have a problem with the reporting within the water fund. But I'm open to suggestions on other ways to manage it from the board, or recommendations that we want to share with the administrator, if you have any thoughts. ask you to for citizens address, please do. Okay, so these items will remain on our old business. Every time that we come, we will discuss it, and we want to make sure that the community knows the things that we've seen and that we continue to push them moving forward. Status of our bond payments. For this one, we just want to make sure we have a bond obligation to be paid of $5.5 million in December. I simply send an email request to the finance department to make sure that we are still on track for that payment, which is due in December. And as of July 31st, we are on track for that payment to be made. There's no reason that we should not get a last minute call from finance or from anywhere saying that we will not make that payment, but we want to make sure that we have something documented that we've been on top of it.
We were on track, right?
Yes, we are. We are on track.
Quick question, I think I asked this before, but we're almost done with the 2004 bond.
Yes, there are 2 bonds from the 2004 series. This will be our final payment on that bond, which will reduce our bond payments from $5.5 million by about $1 million per year. So when we do our budget for the next fiscal year, though that will not be a payment, our payments for bonds will be reduced
By about $1 million.
Correct. And then also the status of our water bill payments. We are current with water payments. The major payment is due by September. The settlement arrangement that we've made with the city of Chicago is due by September. It was scheduled that way so that when we collect our second installment of property taxes, a portion of that can be set aside to go towards the water payment. So likewise, we receive an email from Chris with the Conspiracy Group that we are on track, and we will confirm by our October meeting that the payment has been made. And if the board would like, we can request a copy of the check, or that the check is cleared, depending on preference of the board, what detail of verification we would like.
A question. You say 2004. Is it 1 bond or 2 that will be paid?
We actually took out 2 bonds in 2004. Both of those will be paid in full, and we took out 3 bonds in 2009. And those bonds will remain with half payments that we will continue paying for at least another 5 years. It may be a few years longer than that. I don't have the exact time frame.
Thank you.
Okay. And one additional report, again, it's the status of our uncollected water, which again goes to the challenge that we're having with the reporting. It should be the last page within the package, so it does not have a page number. The heading is Village of Dolton Utility Aged Trial Balance by District. And if some do not have it, it's a 1-pager. I can get a copy of it, but I'll share it just so we can. I'm gonna take a brief pause. I'll take a brief pause. I'm gonna see if Trustee Steve can sing while I make a copy. Hold on. So, brief pause. We're gonna pass this. I'll pass this 1-pager out so we can. I can show the report. What the report looks like. It has the same error that we were looking at on the water department report, but I want us to all be familiar with the report itself. Oh, if you don't mind. Yeah, please.
Good.
Yeah, I want us to at least be familiar with what the report looks like, so that as we continue ongoing month after month, we can see the change in the status, what we're collecting, what we're not, and this is a good way for us to track the success that we're having with collecting on water bills, whether that be shutoffs or people being more mindful that that bill is important for them to take care of their obligation. So we'll pause for just a moment while we get that report. I'll go over it, and then we'll go into, well, if we can. Hold on one moment. I'm gonna bring the microphone up so you can.
Where is the safe speed on here? Do we have a section for that?
Safe speed is the red light collections. It's in the revenue section. It's titled fee. Is titled, I want to say red light camera fee. So it should be within the first 3 to 4 pages. Page 4 for revenues. It has red light fees, and it'll show July actual was $470, fiscal year to date $670, and then what our budget was for the fiscal year. The budget was adjusted down due to just collections that we're working on doing. However, that's where you'll see the revenues from Safe Speed. Okay. Thank you, Trustee Steve. I appreciate the assistance. So the report that we're looking at now, and it's called the utility age, but that is our water bill report. Because we are broken down into districts, the 3 primary districts, 1, 2, and 3, are the residential water districts that we speak of, the way that the village is broken down. 4 and 6 through 8 there's one unincorporated section, and 6 through 8 are the commercial water bill districts. So of course we want to monitor those as well. The residential is where the bulk of the revenue comes in at. So the error in terms of our reporting, if we look at District 3, 61 to 90 days shows $2.2 million of outstanding water bills. I've been advised that is overstated by $2 million. So the error in the software has overstated us by $2 million. The estimate I was given is that if we have 5.9 million showing on this report, that we should be approximately 3.9 million worth of outstanding water bills.
Let me take the 2 off.
Correct. Correct. No, we are owed 3.9 million.
But you see the bulk of it only is residential.
Correct. So the bulk of it, so Area 1, according to this report, has 757,000 of outstanding water bill balances. 610,000 of that is more than 120 days old. Area 2, $1.4 million outstanding water bills. 650,000 of that more than 120 days. And that the one over 120 is significant because we bill quarterly. So the first 90 days, it could be possible that they're still within their grace period and haven't paid. But once you hit 120, we know that they're definitely behind in some capacity. That could be 1 day delinquent, or it could be 2 years delinquent because we've just categorized it all as 120 plus. Yes. The Area 3 District 3 is where we have identified that the error in reporting is, and then the other districts are showing. So this is the report that, again, month after month, we will continue to monitor. That will let us know what our status is on catching up or enforcement of the water bills. I'm with you. I got one concern from a resident that the questions are not being heard when they view them, so I want to make sure we get as many at citizens addressed. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to. Yeah.
Record it so people can watch it.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to ignore any questions. I want to make sure I.
So no more outbursts.
Yeah. I don't want my virtual audience to beat me up on here. But having said that, these are the things that on a reoccurring basis, these are the things that we're going to talk about. There will be some new items. Next month we'll talk about the status of our audit report. There were some good questions asked. Of course, we know we wanted to hire more police officers, while at the same time we still have fiscal constraints. I think the plan that was put out there, in particular, if we get funding for this year, we have the 4 to 6 months while we're looking at recruiting, that we can monitor the finances and make sure that we can afford it, and we can also see whether or not the outside funding comes in. We also do have some savings that we got from the officers that haven't been hired that we will hire, so we have time to monitor it. As we move into the next fiscal year, it will definitely be the challenge or the obligation of the finance committee to make sure that those that we hire, we can continue to do so. There will be some relief, as Trustee Steve mentioned, with the bond payment not being the reduction in the bond payments. We also want to make sure that we're monitoring the ticket revenue increasing to see at what rate that increases. So we should see more productivity, and that's the things that we want to look at month over month as we get more officers to see that they're out there writing the tickets and doing the enforcement. I know our former chief would mention that it's about compliance, and it definitely is. From a finance component, we know that compliance also generates revenue, so it's a good way in my mind of monitoring how well we're enforcing compliance.
If we can collect some of our unpaid water bills, then that definitely could fund the police officers that we're trying to bring on. Because if you look at what's uncollected, if we can find some type of way to collect these funds, then that could possibly help out with the way we're trying to fund additional 15 police officers. But we got to come up with some kind of way that we'll be able to collect this money that's just sitting out there that's owed to the village.
The reason why I was mentioning the safe speed is we did take it out of the budget due to the circumstance with the safe speed red light camera, but we are in the process now. We're training. We're anticipating that starting next Wednesday, we're going to start to get tickets in the queue again. We have approximately 50,000 tickets that we're going to be reviewing. After about a month's time, I'm going to sit down with Trustee House and go over how many tickets we actually review within a month. In the past, we were collecting $35,000 a month on average from safe speed tickets. So I'm anticipating that number to go up because we're going to have more people reviewing tickets, specifically doing that instead of people just doing it in their spare time. So I'm anticipating we're going to double the amount. As soon as we satisfy the amount of money that we owe safe speed, which depending on after a month when we see, it may take us 5 months, it may take us 6, but after that period, we should be able to see an increase in revenue. I'm anticipating maybe $50,000 a month, so that'll also give us some relief, and then we'll be able to put this back in the budget.
So thank you for that, and Administrator Scott, thank you for your time. We don't want to be forgetful that these are after-hours events for our camera crew as well as the administrator, so the engagement of everybody is always critical. But having said that, I think we've heard enough from me. So any comments or thoughts from the board, and then we'll move into citizens' address?
I'm good.
Okay. So I ask that we have citizens' address, and please feel free to give us any questions or thoughts that you have.
Good evening, trustees, residents. Regarding the water, how far does that go back?
The 120 plus?
Yeah, how far does that go back, that number, that 3.9 million?
3.9, it could be as long as 3 years. From what I've been informed, we switched over our system 3 years ago. The things that within the last 3 to 4 years, we can track it and feel that we comfortably have reliable numbers. Prior to the switch of our system, if there were some outstanding things, it's not as reliable. So I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that those things we would pretty much have to write off that we didn't collect that and we have to move forward with it.
Okay, thank you. And then regarding the police. Last night, the board voted to hire 15 additional police officers. But that does not include the 5 that was already in the budget, correct?
Correct.
So, according to the budget, we have a amount of $500,000 in surplus.
In the operating account,
Operating.
500.
But
Yes,
that
sir.
doesn't include, as we spoke about, Melanie Fitness, correct?
That's correct.
So we could easily only have 100, about 100, 120 after that's, if that deficit or if that loss happens from Melanie's.
If Melanie's budget maintains what it is, then it will be about 150 from the operating account that we have surplus, yes.
Okay. So in regards to the police officers, are we having thoughts outside of the possible funding from DOJ to fund the 15 officers? Because I'm nervous that, one, we don't know how long that's going to take. Two, we don't even know if we're going to get it. So it's kind of like that doesn't help the immediate need, nor does it help the future need, obviously after a fiscal year. So are we having those conversations and thoughts?
I'll give my opinion, and then I'll yield to any board members that they have. So my vote to move forward with the 20 officers, we have 5 officers that are in the budget that we have not fulfilled. We're 3 months into that time frame now, so that's already a savings, if we call it each officer $100,000. At 3 months, we probably have about $75,000 to $100,000 worth of budget surplus that will be there that we haven't spent. And then there's gonna still be a time frame, as the mayor mentioned that when we were having our discussion, that it could be 4 to 6 months before we get those officers in. So there's gonna be a hiring time, a transition time, which also means there's more unspent budget dollars that can be used to apply towards it. I think that as we go look at it month after month, which is why these reports are going to be so critical, we will see how that time frame lines up. So next month, if we're blessed enough to have a hiring of 12 officers in 1 month, and we see that kind of spike, we can see what kind of impact that has on the budget, and then at that time see if we need to put a hiring freeze or if we need to continue to push forward. So my vote for a move forward is to make sure that we're not jamming up a process for officers that we desperately need, while also knowing that being on the finance committee, there's a mechanism to monitor monthly. We will continue to have the monthly meetings. We've had them for the last 3 months. The only months we will not have the monthly finance meeting will be December and November because of holidays conflicting in that last week. That does not mean we will not have finance reports, nor will I stop continuing to look at that, or they be made available to the residents. It's just, so my tracking mechanism is the monthly reports, seeing what our spikes are, and realizing that there is going to be a onboarding time frame to bring those things into place. Having said that, I'll see if any of the other trustees had any different thoughts.
You good?
I just want to say on the Melanie Fitness that I do not anticipate, or we as the board don't anticipate that it will be draining us as much as it has been. Since we're close to getting the pool reopened, there's going to be an uptick in our, the membership will drastically go up once that pool is open. So that money that's being drained, will go down once that pool gets open, and we're actually getting more members now because the energy over there is moving. It's movement over there. People are seeing improvement. So the money that's costing the village now will not be the same as it was last year once the improvements are made.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to stay on that and go back to the police. Can you provide any figures as far as the anticipated revenue that the pool would bring in?
No, I can have that for you though,
Okay.
but I can't do it now.
Yeah, when you get a chance. And my suggestion with the officers, because currently with the agreement we have with Cook County, we're not paying them, correct? They're doing that just pro bono. Somebody suggested to me last night, looking at how Fort Heights currently does it. I know they pay a certain amount a month, and basically Cook County is their police. And they provide in-hand services. I know we just do 10 to 12 right now, 7 days a week. I would just suggesting to look into that as far as paying the county sheriffs monthly. They can provide in-hand services instead of just roaming around for those late hours. They can provide additional patrol maybe or whatever, the enhanced services. So I was just reaching out to Fort Heights to see how they do it, because that could be also a help pending or in addition to if the DOJ and whatever. And then it also may help us while we generate revenue funds for the village until we can afford our own full-time officer.
want to stop and just pause and say thank you, first of all, for the questions, and then the suggestion too. I know sometimes when we ask questions, it may seem disagreeable, but I think that the open conversation helps out everybody involved. So thank you for that, Mr. Burse. Ms. Wells?
I just have a question about the police. I know that it was agreed to hire an additional 15. I just want to have clarity that if the funding, and it was emergency funding that we're going to apply for,
Yes.
if that is not received, do we move forward with that hiring if it's not in the budget?
My suggestion, if it's not, whether it's approved or not, if it's approved, we go back and we rebudget knowing that we have additional funds for that, so that way we can look at a clearer picture. If it's not approved, we still go back to the budget and see what officers we are able to afford. And I'll say that again, recognizing that as we look month over month, we should see, currently we should be seeing that our officers our budget is ahead of what we've actually been spending on officers, because we've been understaffed based on the model. So there should be extra money in there that we can allocate to hiring officers throughout the duration of this year. But in either case, we would need to rebudget upon notification that we have or have not received that funding.
I think it's also important that we see that, and we have to look into this, because there was 4 officers before we got elected that retired or either left that never were replaced. So there's a gap we have to figure out. We were just talking about that, we have to figure out where this money. There's some lieutenants and some sergeants that retired that were there for 30 years, so they were making a whole lot more than a new officer coming in, and they were never replaced. So we have to really get a hold of where's that money at, and how can we replace these without really adding the new ones coming in without even really adding to the budget, because the money may already be there.
Okay, and I know Trustee Denton just mentioned overtime, so thank you.
I have another question. You mentioned that we're just paying off bonds from 2004, correct?
Correct.
And that's going to free up some monies, correct?
And the next fiscal year, yes.
So did the board not vote to take out another bond just this past, a few months ago?
Yes, but this was a different type of bond. The bond from 2004 was a 20-year bond. They had rates that ranged from 3.3 up to 6%. But we had to repay it over 20 years, and it was a much larger size bond. I want to say it was in the range of 7 to 10 million. The bond that was voted on last year was a 1-year bond that we do with Homewood Disposal to arrange for the pickup and haul off of our garbage. It's a 1-year bond, so by next year it will be satisfied. We have been doing this bond for the last 2 to 3 years that I've been on the board, and I believe a few years prior to that. The rate on it is 4%, so we are paying 4% interest on the garbage being picked up. The downside, if we decided not to do it, the $500,000 surplus that we're projecting in our operating account right now would be a $900,000 deficit, and we would be looking at maybe a change of other services that we may need to either cut or other revenue we have to raise. And in a short time frame, it's hard to raise that kind of revenue.
So are we positioned now to not take out an additional bond next year? So, because I'm a little confused, if we're paying Homewood Disposal with bond money now, do we have money to pay them next year, or are we going to just do bonds every year and pay them back at 4%?
My thought is we're not right now in a position that next year we will not need the bond. So too many knots. Next year, I believe we will need to take out another bond. My hope would be that we're able to gradually reduce it from 1.3 million to maybe 1.1 million to 900,000, so that we progressively get off of the bond. But I'm anticipating that next year we would probably need a bond, or if the community demands that we stop the bond process that we've been doing, then we will have to look more aggressively at revenue sources. And not to say that that's not a consideration now, but looking at it versus actually doing it, two different things. So sometimes it becomes more challenging. Or the alternative is, how do we cut additional services? And I think there's such a need for the services of Public Works, the fire department, the administration, that I'm very hesitant to try to recommend any reduction in service right now when we got such a need.
One thing we must remember, though, that water bill, the garbage pickup is paid through the water bill.
Yes.
So if you've seen a problem in the water bill, then you know we're going to have a problem with the garbage pickup, because if it's not, the water bills are not being paid, then we know the Homewood disposal is not being paid either. So hopefully, with the new processes in place for the water department, hopefully, like you said, maybe next year you got to take another bond out, but hopefully after that, gradually it should be going down with the new processes and procedures in place, hopefully.
So speaking of water department, and you talked about identifying where the errors are, is that in the software? And if it is there a plan in place to replace software? What are we doing about that? Because it sounds like that has been going on way too long, and the residents are suffering as a result. So that's one part, so can you answer that?
Yes, and I agree that I had about a 45-minute talk with our finance. The error is in the software within the reporting. So and my statement was, there's no way we can know that we're making progress if we don't have good reports. He assured me that by Friday we would have clean reports, and those reports are to be emailed to the administrator, mayor, and the board of trustees. And I think everybody on this board is more than happy to share any of that with the residents. And we can also do an update next week at our regularly scheduled board meeting. I can include that with our finance report. Just that we recognize that it's a big issue, and we want to make sure that we're communicating that we're following up on that. So I agree, it's been an issue for the last 3 months that we've had financial reports, and the resolution time frame that I was given was this week Friday.
One last comment, and I'll pass on. So in one of the columns, the payments that are over 120 days, and we know that that's probably abandoned properties, people probably moved out. Have you put into thought that those, you may not be able to collect on them?
That is definitely a reality that we may not. It's a matter of how much time we want to allocate to what's uncollectible, which we know we have to figure out what's uncollectible and clean it off the book so that we have better reports, versus the manpower being put into collecting as much as possible. So those are two separate projects that have to go on simultaneous, and we have to identify, first we want to collect what we can, and at the same time we want to make sure that we're cleaning up the deceased accounts, maybe accounts that have moved 3 or 4 times. So there's been thoughts put into that. How do we outline that as a project and move it forward? I don't know that we have a full game plan for it, honestly, but that is definitely something that I will update. I'll put it down as an action item for me to update.
I think that should be something that's priority. If this is a real issue for our town, so we need to identify what we can collect on and what we can't, and just keep moving forward.
Ooh, Liz has a cape on. Come on over here, Liz.
I really don't. I got a bulletproof vest. But one of the things that we are in the process of working on now, which Trustee House mentioned and the other trustees, was sending some of these delinquent bills that we know were from abandoned properties, but people were there and they walked away. We are sending those now over to municipal collections. So when we're going to see the bulk of that money, we're going to realize that is when it comes tax time. So next year, I'm anticipating that we're going to see an uptick in those collections. They'll be, garnishing people's wages, and we'll be able to see some of that money, right, in their taxes. So we'll be able to see some of that money, even though people did walk away from the homes. They are abandoned, in fact, but those people still are relocating. They're somewhere else, and they are collecting checks. So we're in the process now of sending that over. But like I said, we're not going to realize that income, honestly, until probably sometime next year. Okay.
So it sounds like you've already started the process.
We have started the process, but it's determining those homes are abandoned. It's a process. We have to work jointly with housing, with the water department, and then my executive assistant, Shantia, who's now over collections, she's actually in the process of gathering them and sending them over one by one, but it's like a big arduous process because she has to collect all the stuff, send it over, send all the background paperwork from the housing over to collections, but we are anticipating on seeing an uptick in collections then.
Great. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. You mentioned that we're on target for paying Chicago's water off after the property tax. How much is that you'll be paying Chicago?
I have to get the total. I don't know that off the top of my head, so my apology. I can get that
We
to
need
you
to
and
know
send you a
that.
message.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Quick question. It was mentioned last night that you would have a dollar amount available that we were going to donate for the funeral expenses for the young lady that was shot. I think I remember we'd asked first that we just don't donate the flowers, give the money amount, but then you
I
said
was
you
just
had a
walking in during that part of it. No, I'm teasing. The suggested amount that will be sent to all trustees for an email confirmation was $1,500 to go directly to the funeral home. So that way we know that the services are being, that we are paying to the service and not to miscellaneous expenses. So that was the amount that we were suggesting in there, and there's a miscellaneous line item expense within our budget that would be reduced by $1,500, assuming that the board agreed with it.
Okay, but I'm thinking too, maybe not to the funeral expenses, but for the burial, because I'm told the funeral is being covered 100% by a private person.
Oh, I am completely okay with that.
Okay.
Hold on.
Andrew knows it. Andrew Jackson.
Hey, how's everybody doing this evening? I think we should look at what we can give either to the family or the funeral home, because a lot of that is being covered already. As far as the funds for the victim compensation, that might be put to the side because of the GoFundMe, because victim compensation would not support or pay for it because of the GoFundMe. Now, the plot would be about $800 for that service. So we should think about, whether we're going to give it to the cemetery, because it's not that much, or either just give it to the father for the family, get the money on it and give it to him. Because I understand, that funeral is covered already, but the burial, it doesn't cost that much for a plot, about $700 to $800. And that may be covered already too, for us to gross some money that they're getting. So let's think about what we're going to give the funds to. Thank you.
Okay, so I think my suggestion with that is, amongst us, we have to identify who's working with the family to identify where the true need is in terms of money being given. And I think Trustee Holmes seems that he's in communication, and then if the board is okay, we will go forward with $1,500, and then Trustee Holmes can maybe give us direction on who that can be issued to. I looked through the budget. We had, I want to say there was, I'll find the line section. Police. Sorry, my pages are out of order. Within our general fund, we have a general miscellaneous expense category. That had $5,000 available to it. On page 8. Down towards the bottom, there was a other miscellaneous expenses category that has $5,000 available for. usage, and that, so I figured we could use $1,500 out of that category to assist with the family. So that was some of it was just kind of rough guesstimates, and then finding the budget item to pull it from.
Thank you, sir. I'm just suggesting that we as the board, if we do give anything, I would say that we stay within $500. You know, that's just my opinion about it. You know, at least we are helping in some type of way, but I think we should stay within $500.
Okay, Annie?
I agree with Trustee Denton. I think it was towards the burial, that they didn't have the burial paid for just yet. So if you can find out if the funds are still needed for the burial, then let's just put it towards the burial, because they're going to need it. So can you please find out and then let us know? And if the burial is not paid for.
And I spoke with a couple of business owners today that were talking about helping us to offset the expenses that we're spending the money. I don't know if he wants me to say his name, but anyway, someone came to my office today, a business owner in Dolton, and expressed some of the other businesses were interested in helping us to donate some money. So we were trying to figure out today how we'd go about that. And it was someone that's involved in the Chamber of Commerce. So we're trying to figure that out, how we're going to, do that. If there's going to be a fundraiser, if they're just going to put forth their money and not ask some of the other businesses. But I'm going to get more detail, because it was something that was just brought to me today. So we will definitely be donating something, and we'll try to figure out. But we definitely have some people in the community and some business owners that want to help us and help the family.
But if I can I just ask for board's thoughts on Trustee Holmes' suggestion of $500 versus $1,500? I'm totally okay with. I think if he's in tune with the family, I would go along with that as well. But
Again, I think I would like to get the specifics, but Trustee Holmes seems to be tied in with the family of what's the exact cost. So I would like to get the exact cost before we commit to anything and see what's needed.
I agree.
And since we hijack citizens, address residents, please. If there's any conflicting thoughts, please feel free to say it.
I just didn't agree with the 1,500 without knowing where it's going. 1,500 is 1,500, and it could go anywhere. You would never know where it's going. You want to specifically say it's going towards this. If it's going towards, and I've been involved with burials, that is expensive, opening and closing. If it's going toward that's fine, but you need to narrow it down to where it's going and about the exact amount. Not 1,500, there it is. No, it may not be but 500 that's needed. So don't overextend yourself if you don't have to.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you want to do a repast, whatever, and just be in charge of the repast.
Okay. Thank you for that input. Okay. Mr. Bursch, you have anything?
This is something separate, though.
Okay. Please feel free.
Is it possible that the committee through Casper can provide a analytical forecast for the village, i.e., if our budget holds with anticipated revenues, when will the village be in the black? When could the village be in the black?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll come back with. Yes, we can make the request. I'm going to make the request, but I'll also ask them how much they charge us to do that, because we want to make sure that we have, so those two things, if that's something that we know how much it'll cost and we want to move forward with it, then we'll be more than happy to do as asked.
Thank you.
One last question, I promise. So looking at the expenditures, these are all the things that are paid out, correct?
Yes.
So is there...
I'm sorry, I want to amend that. This includes our payables, so that doesn't mean that everything's been paid. As soon as a bill is sent to us, it gets entered into the system whether paid or not, because the way that the accounting standards request us to do it, they want to make sure that we are documenting that we owe somebody whether we've paid them or not.
Okay, can you look with me on page 5 for a moment? I just have a question.
Okay, I'm there.
So for the line item, credit card expenditures, it says fiscal year-to-date actual. So we spent $26,064.29. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But nothing in July actual? Just the year-to-date?
My understanding of the credit card is put in there, and I will confirm this. The credit card expense, because it can be swiped for various items. So generally, if you have a credit card, you put it in there for that 1 month as what you spent, but then you have to line item. So let's say that some items are gas, if some things were paid on a utility bill, those are 2 different expenses. So the following month, they'll go back and break them out into the appropriate categories. You really shouldn't see a balloon of credit card expenditures because they could be spent on so many various items that you want to get better detailed reporting of where those things are going. Supplies is another item that it would be spent on.
So when you order through Amazon, for example, our copy paper, all of that stuff, it gets ordered through the credit card.
Oh, does it really?
Yes,
No
it does.
GL accounts, you don't do invoices?
Yeah, we do GL, but we have to have a credit card on file with them.
Really?
Yes. And then also certain things that I order that might be offset through donations. I take the money from the donations I receive and we apply it towards the credit card payment. So
Okay.
there's a lot of things that fall under that category. Sometimes we have to purchase different equipment that would fall under Public Works, but it gets ordered at Menards, for example. That would come, sometimes we have to use a credit card. It just depends on where we're ordering from for the different departments, but then, like he said, that gets allocated back under the expenditures under the various departments, if that makes sense.
Okay. That makes sense, thank you.
I just want to say one more thing about that. When I was the media director, I had to order the equipment with the credit card, but then I had to turn my PO in so they can account where that money went. So we get the bill and say, who did you order this, but then I would turn my PO in for it. But there's certain things that, not just in the media department, throughout the village, that could only be ordered on a credit card, that you couldn't just go to a store and buy, that you had to order online.
Thank you for that.
Okay. You triggered another question.
And please, if this is improper for this committee, please direct me to the committee or the person. I'm just thinking about the finances. With the purchase of the Fiat vehicles, how many do we have and what are they being used for specifically? Because I know there's been confusion all over, not just in Dolton. I know specifically one person that asked on Facebook, and I tagged the village, and the response was code enforcement, but we're seeing code enforcement vehicles. We've seen some say police, and we've seen just the general village of Dolton tag with the mayor's name. So, if you could,
If I may.
just for clarity, because people have been.
If I can ask the administrator to kind of.
So some of them are being used by code enforcement, some are used by the inspectors. We had several vehicles, they were not fuel efficient. We were spending so much money on fixing them. We have turned those vehicles over now. Some of them are going to be, we're going to be using them for scraps, I believe, sending them in, whatever we can use for parts. But those vehicles, that's what they're being used for. They're being used for code enforcement and the inspectors right now. And I think there's only, 6 of them? Yeah. And they're much more fuel efficient than the other cars, which is saving us thousands of dollars in gas.
Which I think, yeah, you spoke to that when you brought it to the board some months ago about it, how the current vehicles you use, it's not worth it. And then also, so with the code enforcement, I've seen a green minivan around town doing code enforcement to older ladies wearing construction jackets, writing tickets. Sorry, parking, sorry, not, they didn't call them some code enforcement, they called parking enforcement, I think it was. Anybody elaborate on that? 'Cause they were around my house writing tickets.
I know, I seen them around my house. It is, what are they write the tickets, if you don't have a sticker or stuff like that, they were the crossing guards, because they were on my block. And I said, what y'all doing over here? He said, oh no, we write tickets if we don't see it, a village sticker or stuff like that, they go out and write tickets for that as well.
That was something that wasn't done in the past, that we were trying to create
So they're village employees?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're crossing guards that are working in the summer as part, writing tickets. Yeah, like meter, almost like meter maids.
Okay.
They report to the police department.
I got one question for Trustee House. No, I don't have a motion yet. Since I've been, recording these meetings and watching these meetings for the past few years, I remember last year was always, there's in a terrible condition and you got to make these hard cuts and it was such a depressing outlook on the village finances. Could you give us an update? It seems like to me, you're more versed in it, but it seems like we're headed in the right direction and we're headed to improve these village finances and actually stabilize this village financially.
I'm cautious on saying that. I never think that we were in a terrible. There's always there's a solution for every problem. I look at the village finances kind of like non-for-profits. We have to recognize that that surpluses are as dangerous as deficits, because if you have a surplus, that means that there's tax dollars that are being given and not spent on the resources of the community. A deficit means that we're spending way too much. Keeping that in mind, we are behind the 8 ball. We have a lot of things to address, but I feel that as things come up, we do address them. We work hard to put a plan in place, and we want to work with the community to make sure that everybody knows where our challenges are. If we continue to do that and everybody works together, I'm sure that we'll be financially responsible. We'll continue, as long as we have those bonds out there, we're going to continue to have issues. We're going to continue to be short. Every department will tell you, whether they have as many people as they need or not, we need more people. So we have to have mixed balances of how we address it in realistic ways. But I think that everybody's working together. I think that we're trying our hardest to report honestly and accurately. So I don't believe there will be anything that will come up and surprise us. But when we have challenges that do come up, we have to figure out how we're going to address it. Needing 20 more officers is difficult. So that's going to be a big strain, but I think we will work together to find out how we make it happen.
Motion to adjourn.
I've got another question. Trustee Steve, I appreciate the membership drive you're doing with the revitalization of Melanie's. Do you have a timetable on, if this doesn't work, we're done? Or do you have like 3 months, 6 months, or anything like that? Because, like I said, I think we all appreciate that, what's going on at Melanie's. But it's being realistic but hopeful at the same time. So we won't say, oh, we're 3, 4, or 5 years and this isn't working, or this hasn't worked, or we got to change direction, and we're still working on something the same way. So you can just speak to that.
I think realistically, I know once we get the pull up, we're going to get an upkick in memberships, because we have people call every day asking us about what's going on with the pool, that they will come back after we got the pool. I do feel that the residents who go over there and people who are loyal to that gym, I think we deserve a good hard year, 2 years to get it, to see if we can make it self-sufficient, because we still provide a service to these residents and to these seniors who come over there. I've told people when I ran, I put that on our literature, and I want to try to hold true to what I said. A lot of times the people run for office and they say this, and then they get in and say, well, I know I said that, but this is what we're going to do. So I do want to try to I want to at least give it a hard year, 2 years. I know once we get the pool going, which we're very close, I talked to somebody today, then we can start monitoring. I got a young guy over there giving me the reports of everything. So we're going to monitor it every month. Once that pool gets open, how much we're going to go up every month. And I can report back. Once that pool gets open, then we'll really kick it off as far as the membership drive. And then I will monitor, I will report back and keep it open and transparent of what's going over there, how much we're spending and how much we're bringing in. And I say, give it a good hard year, 2 years, and then we can make a good assessment of whether or not we should keep it or not. And then I can say to the residents and say, look, I've been over here, I gave it a good year or 2 years, this didn't happen, then I can feel better for myself to say, I did try. and people can see I did try.
Thank you for that. How long have we had Melanie's? When was Melanie's?
I honestly do not have an answer to that question, though. So it sounds 15 to 20 years.
So this may sound like a dumb question, but given the history that I don't know, I'm ignorant to it. Was there a point that Melanie's was making money?
I just looked at a report from 2013. That's as far as our reports went back. And it was only, the village was only subsidizing about $5,000. And it was $230,000 to keep it open. And it was bringing in 230 or something, but it was bringing about $250,000 in. That was in 2013. But the membership fees were a little higher. You had a lot of different things, but then you had big salaries over there. So over the last few years, it just, because it was such a political hotspot, it just went down. So then I'm finding out now people are paying $10 a month. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm finding out now as we over there that we're changing now. These specials that we're getting over there that has to be just done away with. So, but yeah, when I went back to 2013, it was bringing in enough to make it self-sufficient when the village was only subsidizing about $5,000. Yes? Well, a special of $10 a month, you know, $10 a month. Yeah, well, you're going to pay $30 a month. $10.
You could get LA Fitness for $19.99.
Yeah, I know, but LA Fitness is not owned by the village, and it's not in Dolton. $10 a month at Melanie Fitness is just too inexpensive. That's too cheap. We're giving the gym away at $10 a month. Yeah.
If that concludes citizens' address, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn the finance meeting.
Second.
Okay, and then calling the roll, Trustee Steve.
Aye.
Trustee Brown.
Aye.
Trustee House, aye. Thanks, everybody, for your participation.